Good morning,
Great.
Gabo. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. Yousra. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. So what time is it there in Uruguay now?
It's about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, here it's like 2 p.m., let's say. So thank you so much for devoting time to talk to me, even though you're on
Please,
holidays.
thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great, always great to talk to colleagues.
Thank you so much. So, Gabo, so I'd like to introduce you, but I guess everybody knows you so where should I start from? So you can tell us.
I just introduced myself. Don't worry. I hate long introductions. The truth of the matter is, I'm just a teacher, right? A teacher who's doing a lot of work as a teacher in the global South. We have to have more than one job, unfortunately, and on top of those two jobs, we always engage in professional development, both as a career move, because our academic careers demand it, but also the pleasure of interacting with colleagues and being able to talk to people who are significant others, professional significant others. So I've always described myself as a teacher who applies the lessons learned in the classroom to my roles. In my current roles, well, I've been a teacher educator for 30 years. I'm also a researcher. I am a researcher in the National Agency for Innovation and Research in Uruguay. And I am an author. I love writing, and I keep writing both for peer-reviewed magazines and publishers. And currently, I am an academic advisor to the Institute of Education at Universidad ORT Uruguay. We are an institute, not a school, because we just offer postgraduate degrees. We don't do undergraduate. So we teach masters in education, in teacher education, in educational leadership, and we also have diplomas in English language teaching and a doctorate in education.
That's really interesting. I've been looking for a doctorate in education, like online. So I will give it a try and I will check some of the positions and the programs available. Thank you so much, Gabo. So I'm going to start with a question which seems to be very, very, natural to ask. Is like, what made you interested in becoming a teacher first? So was it like a choice for you? Or did you just follow a path and then you said, aha, that's the aha moment, and that's the profession that I want to do like forever?
Actually, I'm a teacher because of a friend of mine. I was actually, after high school, I enrolled in college in the School of Law.
Uh-huh.
And the first year was okay. In my country, if you wanted to go to the university in those days, you had to move from the provinces to the capital city. And I did that move. And one of the things that we people from the provinces did, because we were highly segregated by the capital folks, was to band up together. And I ended up banding up in a study group with other kids from the northern provinces. And starting the second year, I started failing all my exams. And then one day we were coming back from an exam on the bus with one of my friends. And I remember I only had enough money for two bus fares, one
Uh-huh.
to go to his house because that day we were going to have lunch in his house, and the other one to go to my house. And so he said, all of a sudden, he stood up in the middle of
The road.
the route and said, like, get up, get up, get up. And I said, well, are you crazy? I don't have money for the bus fare. He said, get up, get up. And we got off across the street from the National Teacher Education College. And he said,
Mhm.
you know what? You're going to go in there and you're going to inquire how you are going to become a teacher because you're going to be a lousy lawyer, but you're an excellent teacher. And that was the thing. I could explain everything to them while we were studying. But when it came the moment to put it on paper, I just couldn't do it. And
Mm.
I knew that law was not my Ikigai. I mean,
Oh
but I
yeah.
didn't know that teaching was. So I gave it a shot. The first semester, there's where I said, okay, this is my place in the world. This is my Ikigai. Here I am complete. So basically, that is how I became a teacher and haven't stopped. It was so rewarding just to I mean, I have been a lousy student all my life because I have attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. And in those days, nobody talked about this.
Mhm.
So I had problems concentrating, but I always was bright for languages. I can speak Italian, I can speak a little French, I can speak Portuguese. And I learned those things in public school. And everybody says that you cannot learn languages in public education. Well, I'm proof that you can, right? And so that was what happened. I found myself and my place in the world in that National Teachers College. And that
Ma-
was almost 50 years ago.
Wow. So I
Yeah,
took you like in a time traveling machine back in a time. So let's go a little bit
absolutely.
there. So I'm gonna ask you another question, which is, do you remember your first teaching experience?
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
the entrance to the class. How did you prepare? What was your first lesson, if you can remember that? So I still remember mine, so I'm sure like everybody can do that. Yeah. Can you tell us more about it,
My
please?
my make it or break it moment was not during my teaching practice. I mean,
Yeah.
we had teaching practice every year, right? And this was a 4-year course. But what happened was in those days, we were in the middle of a dictatorship in Uruguay, so decisions came and nobody questioned them. And I remember that the year I started college, teacher training college, the then Minister of Education said right before classes started, now starting in first grade high school, every student is going to learn English. Now, there was a need for teachers and the system went nuts. So we had national inspectors in those days, and they came to the college and said, okay, you don't know how to teach. We don't care. You are going to be the future of our profession. So today, everybody's going to take one group, at least one group in the public school system. And I got a first grade. And then they would give us in-service training every Saturday morning. We had to go to a school and we were given demonstration lessons and all that. But I took this first group in a school that was near where I lived. And that was a school where my father and my mother had done high school. It was their high school.
Mhm.
And they had been the founding generation of that
Oh,
high
that's
school, right? So we had a lot of affective memories for me. And I was so confident that I was going to do well because I was doing well in college, you know. Now, the problem is I learned English through the audiolingual approach, right?
Mhm,
I'm the
mhm.
product of the audiolingual approach. Repeat after me. The teacher will come into the classroom and say, close your books. Nobody had their books open, but that is what the script said the teacher had to
Yes.
say. Close your books. And then we did oral drills,
Drilling.
very long sentences that we had to scramble how to memorize to repeat. And when we could repeat them perfectly, the teacher said, okay, now open your books. And we had the same sentences and same substitution drills to do in reading and then writing.
Yeah.
So what did I do? Poor things. I had 45 or 48 first grade students, 12-year-old students, who all of a sudden were learning English for the first time with not a clue. So I subjected them to 45 solid minutes of drills.
Wow.
Still remember the frustration. It was like an incremental level of frustration as I could see their eyes glazing over. And of course, they started misbehaving because it was so boring.
Boring.
But that is what I had been used to
Taught
doing.
how to
That's
do
what
it.
had
Yeah.
been done to me. And it
Mhm.
had worked for me. So why not for them? And I remember I just lashed out and I said, look, I learned the language this way. You are going to learn language this way. Then I started the in-service training and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Was when
Doing everything that is supposed not to be done. Pardon me.
so
So I remember my first class very distinctly.
this brought a lot of memories from my learning experience with some of my teachers, you know, but I consider like it was like only one like a, a part, like let's say in time, maybe for 5 max to 10 years. But I still remember because I studied at how do I call this? It was not an international school, but it was at the same time a French school. So, but I had many friends from all over the world. You know, there were like children to expats in Tunisia, and I still remember the approach of some of my teachers. But I loved English at that time. You know, I learned it through songs, I learned it through movies, but there was that drilling part, which was boring a little bit. Yeah. So I think this generation, they're really lucky to have teachers like, you know, we're doing our best to let the students enjoy the learning experience.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't know. There's this thing. I'm an advocate for public education because I'm the product of public education. In my country, education is free. It is laic, so it's not
Same.
connected to religion.
Mm.
And it is compulsory from ages 5 to age 18. So that is a huge thing for a
It is.
small country. We're just 3,400,000 inhabitants. And we pay for education through our taxes, right? And we used to have a very strong and solid um, um, education system. Well, you know, the vagaries of politics. The first thing that generally gets defunded is education, which is not considered an investment in the future of the country, but an
Yes.
expense. So we're going through those motions at the moment. Yesterday, I was reading on Facebook a colleague, I don't know her, but she's part of a teaching collective. I belong a community of practice. And she posted this, and this is scary, 26 years in the public school system, 9 years in the private school system, and 3 years as a teacher educator. She wrote those figures and then she says, as of today, I'm unemployed. I couldn't choose a teaching position anywhere in either of those three systems. So this is tough, right? This is tough. And I think that we have to advocate for those situations not to happen. Because what
Yeah.
happens in the end is when those qualified teachers cannot go into the classroom because of all these political nonsense.
So what I can, yeah.
They outsource to another profession, and then suddenly the classrooms don't have teachers.
Yeah.
And who comes to teach people who are not prepared, who are going to do harm like I did to my first students? So this is what we need to defend, the value of our profession.
Exactly. You know, I'm going to elaborate on what you said when it comes to the public sector and the private sector, because I believe in both. I have worked my first experience was at a public institution. That was the institution where I studied. So, and after this, I discovered that there can be a path in the private sector. And what I do believe, and I always advocate for this, in my country, whenever I attend any public gathering, a conference, any event, it's like we should never let down the public sector because, as you said, we pay it from our taxes first.
Yeah.
Second, it's like the pillar, let's say the foundation of every country. For us, just like Uruguay and Tunisia, it's compulsory to study until the age of 16, I guess, or maybe 18, I'm not sure. But what I'm sure is like 16 should be there. It's a must, and it's free education to everybody. So if it's really, like, let's say, providing everybody with the best conditions to achieve, let's say, the highest level of education, why don't we do that? And why don't we support that? And what I really advocate for is like continuous professional development. It's like not because I got a job and I guarantee that job for a particular time. It's like I don't go anymore to teacher development, let's say advanced. It's like it's a lifelong learning experience. And it's like sometimes I just meet people that know me and I don't know them. So, and they tell me, we've met you in such and such event, and I remember seeing you everywhere. So that's the point. It's like even by being there can really inspire others. So let's do it. And providing support, that can be a good thing through, for example, the teacher you talked about. So she worked in all sectors. I am for the teacherpreneurship, for the edupreneurship. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, in 2020, I left my job. I tried to start my own business, my own classes, courses. I started to develop everything online. I record my own videos. I even created, even though it's like a beginner level, but my own videos for marketing to those courses. And out of that came the podcasting experience to speak up what I wanted to say. So it's like, if you don't find an opportunity, create one. So that's what I believe in that. So I should not really give up on a chance to be, let's say, impactful in the world simply because people won't hire me. So I create a chance and I can hire people at that time. So that's what I really strongly believe in that.
No, speaking of that, I mean, you started by making this distinction that we unfortunately make between the public and private sector. And it's very sad that it's true, the funding for the funding that a high school student gets in the private sector is 40% larger than that they receive in the public sector on average, right? And those are international figures. However, and that has like cascading consequences, because people who were able to attend the privately funded education generally have access to more study and work opportunities. There are figures in Chile, for example. Chile's invested a lot of money sending high school graduates abroad to bring back expertise by fully funding master's and doctoral programs. And what you can see is that those who have access to those scholarships are in general people who have had a private education, a privileged education. Yeah, the odd one out is that kid who, despite all odds, could survive public education, let's say like that. And I don't think this is I mean, it's a reality. The world is like that, but it does not necessarily have to be the norm. I always worked in both private and public because I believe that I need to, whatever small or big impact I can make in any institution where I am serving students, insofar that I am fulfilling my ethical responsibility to serve students well, I am making an impact. And having somebody from the public sector coming to a private institution and sharing with the private institution personnel what the reality of the public sector is always beneficial. We can create synergies between the two, public-private partnerships.
Exactly.
And even if it is just sponsoring soccer, a football match between the two, or a volleyball match between the two, and kids getting to know each other, kids getting to know their realities, that helps build democracy, and that helps build the societies we want to live in.
Exactly. And I'm for partnerships in all its ways. Partnerships can start between the two sectors. And even teachers, they can collaborate. So what else? Like you said, the institutions can do that at all levels, be it in preparing a course, for example, hosting a conference as a partnership event. What else they can do? A lot of things can be done at that level. You know, partnerships, not necessarily, they don't have to pay a huge amount of money to do that. It can be
No,
even something really symbolic, you know. And so that's even the one who did not have the privilege to have access to the
yeah,
private sector, that private education, can have a taste of that and can really know. So there will be no segregation because after all, be you like it or not, they're going to work together at the same company.
absolutely,
Yeah, after that.
absolutely, absolutely.
So, and they're going to walk in the street together. So I do believe in a synergy, just like you said. And since we're
Yeah.
talking about synergy, Gabo, I want to mention something like the synergy of teachers all over the world. It's like you are a global professional. So can you tell me a little bit, how did it all start? Like, was it like in Uruguay and then you went international in other teacher associations, or how was it? How was this experience for you?
Um, like anybody who lives in the global south, I'm particularly living in the southern corner of Latin America that suffered a protracted period of dictatorships. Our countries were very much looking in, and there was never a looking out. Actually, when I did my college, I remember that I studied not from books because books were kind of forbidden, but from notes that
Really?
our teachers dictated. Yeah. I mean, English language teaching was a liberal profession
Oh,
for to
okay.
the dictatorship because it promoted the values of democracy and free speech, all those things that we didn't have. Now, as soon as the dictatorship finished in 1985, teachers started mobilizing, right, and trying to form a local teachers association. And of course, they look to the big ones, TESOL and IATEFL, for inspiration. Now, you have to remember that in those days, TESOL and IATEFL were barely 20 years old,
Yeah.
right? Now
Yeah.
they're 60, right?
Yeah.
So they were also incipient organizations in that sense. They were finding their footing, if you wish. So that was in the 80s when we founded Uruguay TESOL, right? That was affiliate of TESOL and an associate of IATEFL. And we began to receive, in those days, there was no membership scheme, but we had a library for the association and we received TESOL quarterly, all the publications. In those days, the IATEFL newsletter, not IATEFL Voices. So that is how I became engaged in that. And I remember there was 1991, it was the 25th anniversary of TESOL, and they were doing this huge conference in New York. And a colleague of mine started putting together a group of people a year before so that we could save up and pay forward
For the
towards
convention.
accommodation and all those things.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, right? We paid for a year, right? And both my wife and I were lucky to be able to go. And that was the beginning of the whole thing. We discovered what volunteering for international organizations meant. I remember I went to a meeting of the materials writers interest section because I was always interested in, okay, how are textbooks produced and how can I create my own materials? What in those days there was nothing about materials creation, and
Yeah.
these people were the hub of expertise. So they gave me advice on, well, if you're going to give a handout to your students, bear these things in mind. And they were extremely generous,
Jealous.
sharing a lot. So I became engaged with the materials writers intersection. And then lo and behold, that was in March. In August that year, we were having the first big conference after the dictatorship for English language teachers in Uruguay. And that was hosted by the institution I worked for. And I had volunteered to be on the book exhibit team, so dealing with the book exhibitors and organizing part of the program and all that. And we were also encouraged by our institution to give presentations. So I had been working a lot on developing oracy skills with my students. You have to think this was 1991 in Latin America. Very few people were hearing about task-based learning. And I have been studying task-based learning and doing kind of focus experiments on TBL in my classroom. So that is what I showed, what I did with my students. I remember in those days, I literally had tape recorders, and I got my students' permission. I was teaching adults. Uh, I got their permission to
To
record them
record.
and use their data,
Mhm.
and then I transcribed by hand between task one and task two what difference in production there was, etc., etc. So I was presenting that, and I remember that this was in my institution. So all the presentation rooms were classrooms, right? Except for the big hall for the plenaries, which was the institution's theater. I was not going to be presenting there. So I was in this classroom, and I remember the doors were open, right? To accommodate as many participants as possible. And then I saw a woman walk past. She came back, she looked in, and she came and stood at the door
Yeah.
and stayed for
She's
the remainder of the of my presentation. And as I left, she said, like, I know you, but I cannot remember where.
remember.
And what you were saying was so interesting. Well, I said, well, I don't know. I work here. And I said, but like, have you ever been to TESOL in the States? And I said, well, my first time was this year. I went to the 25th conference.
Mhm.
Were you by any chance in the materials writers intersection? I said, yeah, I was.
Yes.
Well, there's where I know you from. And she said, look, I want you to present this in TESOL, but the call for papers has already closed.
Mm.
But she was organizing an academic session. So she invited me to give an academic session, which to me was like, oh, right?
Mind blowing, yes.
Oh, mind blowing. And also, like, I couldn't believe that my work with my students would be of relevance. And that is
To
where I
others.
learned.
Yeah.
So I started saving up like crazy to pay for a ticket to Canada because it was in Vancouver in those days.
Ooh.
And I went and I gave the presentation. And from there on, I just got hooked with doing different things for the association.
So
So just volunteering whenever they say, can anybody help, I don't know, edit a book, I would say, if I had time, I would say I would. Or doing anything, being on the nominating committee, being on a selections committee.
yeah.
I've been doing assessment of presentations for proposals for presentations. I think that since 1993. And this is one thing that I do every year. That's part of my volunteering to the association.
Reviewing
Uh,
proposals. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really what makes it really a work from the heart is like volunteering is you give your time, your effort, and what happened to you is like I think comes up naturally from your spontaneous energies, like you were being yourself, you were just doing the thing you like, you love, and then once everybody does that, he or she gets recognized, and that's really what happened when you got recognized, and then you kept on. That's consistency, doing the same thing. It's like, no, I don't just do it for a period of time because I want to achieve a milestone or something. It's like publish a book or maybe present in a conference. It's like being consistent is really important. And I believe once you like something and you do it, you can't even stop doing it. It's like you just volunteer and then there will be another chance and then until you're still doing it until now. So that's the point.
Well, I think that one has to be grateful grateful to whoever, whatever energy, whatever may affect our lives. But more importantly, you have to be faithful to your principles, and you have to be grateful to the people who have helped you.
Exactly.
Along my career, I'm the product of my many interactions with colleagues and with students. It's false that I am who I am because of me, myself, and I. That is a very reductive position. And I don't know, maybe it was the way I was brought up. Maybe it's because I'm naive, but I believe
No,
that
you're
if
not.
anybody has made an effort to step out of their pathway to give me a hand, I need to return that tenfold because it's time and
Exactly.
energy and resources that somebody
Exactly.
has been able to share with me, right?
Exactly.
The new book, I have a new book coming up it's at the regional level here in Uruguay only in March. We are already in the process of design of the book. And the book came about because of my students.
Hmm.
They kept asking me, Gabo, we don't understand this, and we don't understand this, and but this has no connection to what we are doing in the classroom, and how can you put this together? So what I started doing is I started taking samples of real things from the classroom, right? Like classes that have worked very well. And I started making commentaries to them, like, you see what the teacher does here. This is effective because, and then all of a sudden, I had, for many topics in our syllabus, like learning guides, right?
That's nice.
Where I have packed from real artifacts, from recordings of students in tests, for example, in oral exams that are recorded for quality purposes. And I had a lot of evidences of teaching and learning. So I really wouldn't have thought of doing that had it not been for my students. So the book is dedicated to them by name, and their names appear in the book because it's false that I had this inspiration and I'm the lone writer who can put this together. No. Where did I get the lesson plans from?
Yeah.
From their teaching practice, from going to see their classes, which were perhaps not scripted as such, and
Yeah.
then coming together and going over the lesson and say, you see, if you had planned this, you would have gone and did, oh yeah, and I could have done this. So one has to be humble
It
enough,
is. It is.
admit that no matter how great you think you are nothing and nobody without the help of
Of
others.
course, and because like things change, we change over space and time. And
Oh yeah.
talking about students, um, I had now the idea of maybe because I have the permission of most of their work, which is published online. Maybe I should collect this into something that I can dedicate for them. So, but I will respect the copyright because that's your idea. But the point is that I remember ever since I started working with my students, it's like I started with the audio performance. Then I went into mobile learning and film-based learning, like went into students recording their short movies using only mobile phones. And they were kind enough, to grant the permission so that I can talk about this and like other colleagues wanted to do the same with their students in class. And then I took it to another level. It's like they do it by themselves. So because it started with young learners, so I had to really moderate and facilitate. But the thing is that the classroom practice is really important. It's like were it not for that energy, I can plan like the best lesson that I think really can get the delta, not the celta. But it's like if it doesn't work with that particular group of students, there is something wrong. So
Absolutely.
the human aspect should be there.
Oh yeah.
I never teach the same lesson over and over again. It can be the same, procedure, but adjusted to the level, adjusted to even to the psyche of students. Sometimes I can plan something for role plays, and I feel that the students they're not really well at ease doing that. So I can really adjust that to whatever they want to. And I really believe in the human aspect being there, because it's not about just being awarded as the best teacher, as you said, because you get that recognition from the people who really appreciated your lesson, your presence, your impact that had in your life. I remember some students, they came at that particular time from sub-Saharan Africa, and they did not study English at all. And I still remember a ceremony that they held at the end of the year, simply because they just wanted to say, "Thank you, teacher." That's it. Still remember this. It happened in 2009, and now I can talk about this. It's like people will remember the teacher if the teacher was a human being with them. So it's not about grades. It's not about preparing the best practice. It's good for them, the best practice. I don't really I don't say that it's not good having a good practice in class, but understand and being empathic. So those really the skills that are beyond language teaching, you know, they're really important in a class. So
It's a matter of just conceiving of our profession as what it is. I mean, we are offering a service, which is the service of improving people's lives by accessing a second language.
yeah,
If you are in an English-speaking country, you're giving these
foreign.
people, let's say, the tool to be able to integrate in a new society. And with the spread of globalization, right? If you are teaching like you teach in a monolingual country, or in a country where all the students speak the same language in the classroom, not monolingual, let's do away with the old terminology, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Um, uh, then you're giving them a key to open the door of the world, right?
Yes.
The problem to me is that our profession has always become heavily monetized. There are a lot of because I'm not going to say that receiving a prize is not something that kind of fills your ego, because it does, right?
Yeah, I
You
was
know,
about to say this.
but I think that many people have become obsessed with these recognitions, and recognitions are not always for the work done. It's because of the connections that you have.
Yeah.
And one of the things that to me was a shocker, I always respected very much people who won a certain award in our profession, until somebody wrote to me and said, "Could you please endorse me? I'm sharing a Google Doc with other endorsements I have requested so that I can win this prize." And I was like, wait a minute, weren't you supposed to be nominated
Nominated.
for somebody? And the person confessed, "Oh, yeah, I told two of my students to nominate me." And then I'm collecting. I just said, "Look, even though I admire you and I recognize that you've done a lot of good things for the profession, I cannot endorse you because it's not an honest endorsement.
Mm.
It's an endorsement to fill your ego, right?" And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's a lot of that in the business now, because it's become a business. The profession has become a business. I only hope that what I can instill in my students is just the passion to do well by their students. And when their students say, "Now I know how to do it, and
Thank you for
you
that.
an important part of my process, thank you for that," that is the best reward
Of
you can
course.
get.
Of course. Yeah,
And
yeah, I
the
agree with you.
validation of your peers, not through a prize, which I have received. Thankfully, I've received prizes, but the validation of your peers through a well-received academic article, a well-received book, or a well-received
Presentation.
presentation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
When
exactly.
colleagues come and say, "What you said was so interesting, but have you considered?" And then you engage in that professional discourse. To me, that is the reward that I expect and I look forward in my life as an English teacher.
Oh, and you know, Gabo, is like seeing your publications, seeing your presentations, because I've watched many of them, is the best award for teachers sometimes at that time who could not afford attending an international conference. Through teacher associations, you made it possible. So a reward like, not an award, a reward for, I can see it for myself from simple things, you know. And it's like, for example, even though we're in a period of holidays, you know, and you accepted the invitation and you're devoting time so that you talk to me. And that's really very, very kind-hearted from your part. And I really appreciate it. And, you know, those simple things in life. Maybe sometimes people got used to that. They get used to people really doing good things to others. Sometimes they take it for granted, but I don't. Even though sometimes someone does like very small little thing, be it, I don't know, sharing a resource, until like sharing a valuable conversation, that is really something that I can and should be thankful for that. So I'd like to ask you another question now. I don't want to take a lot from your time, and I know I appreciate that you're on holidays. So the next question is related a little bit. So I'm going to fast forward to, let's say 2021, 2022, 2023 to AI. And oops, jumped up. So let's dive deep into the use of AI and, you know, the drastic change that happened in English classrooms. First, what do you think of AI, Gabriel?
I love it. I love it and I use it. And actually, this book that is coming up in March had a very particular set of readers in mind. And that was student teachers who are just beginning their 4-year academic course. They come to us with a B2 level. So they need materials that can be at that level. So what I did is I wrote my book and I ran it through
ChatGPT.
by the language to B2 level. Then I had to rewrite the whole thing because one of the things that AI does is it makes it very objective. And I write to my readers, so I talk about you, and AI changed it to when teachers, right? So
Really? Okay.
it was a labor of rewriting. Also, there were some very obvious limitations. The overuse of certain expressions, like every chapter had an introduction, right? And in the introduction, I made reference to the topic of the chapter. But the prompt that I gave ChatGPT was, you are a writer of a course book for English language teachers who only have a B2 level, right? So rewrite the following text respecting the B2 level in the Common European Framework. That was the prompt, always the same prompt.
No problem.
And then in every chapter, it started every chapter with, in the realm of English language teaching.
Yes.
That is so phony, for goodness sake. So I had to rewrite a lot of stuff. In the process, I learned a lot, and I was very lucky to be able to explore AI in the company of my students last year. Actually, the API, the Associação Portuguesa de Professores de Inglês, in Portugal, they have a journal, the API journal, e-journal, and I have an article coming up in the next issue where I do a case study of how one of my students engaged with artificial intelligence as part of our class. I told them, look, you guys, it's a matter of academic integrity. I have been there and done that. I remember when we had video impacting ELT and said, oh my God, teachers are going to disappear because now they're going to record a class. Everything is going to be a class.
Yeah.
Then we had the impact of computers in the classroom, the old CAL. Oh my God. So now they are going to do, and then the
Replace
CD-ROM,
teachers.
oh my God, oh, nobody's going to replace
And
us.
now
I
they're
mean,
freaking out because
even if we go to one of those 1984 dystopian realities where Big Brother is watching you,
I was
there
born
will
in
be a human.
1984 and I like
There
the
will
book.
be a human behind the machine, nevertheless. There will be a human behind the machine.
Yeah.
But I do believe that AI as a tool has very interesting possibilities. Um, Things that I encourage my students to do was to use AI to save up time. I say, I have no problem if you go to AI, whichever you are using, and you ask it, plan a class for this, that, and the other. Do it. I have no problem. But then when you teach the class, you're going to feel that you are not teaching a good class. And your students are not going to learn because AI does not know your students.
Of course.
So if you want to cheat, cheat away, but you are not going to succeed. Be mindful of that. And somehow, for example, they said, well, but I have no idea. How am I going to bridge this topic? Well, use AI to provide suggestions. So we have
Solutions.
a topic-based syllabus in Uruguay in public schools. So the topics are human rights or technology. Yeah, but
Globalization. Yeah.
about globalization. But what aspects? So
Yeah.
let's look for interesting. And so we develop these prompts. Can you suggest subtopics for this topic
Topic.
that are interesting to 13-year-olds or 15-year-olds or 17-year-olds? And of course, AI gives you a short list of topics. It's a language-based system. It's not an ideas-based system. It goes by the likelihood of
How you
words
train
appearing.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my experience with AI. Yeah. Because I've
So
tested
they
that.
just go like, oh, but this is useless. Okay, but you've used AI. But from that short list, they say, what if we? What if we? So we use it as a springboard for things. Actually, last week when I returned to Uruguay, I was asked by um, the president of the university. He asked a couple of us to provide good ideas for best practices in using AI for assessment at the university level. And honestly, what AI is forcing us to do is to do best practices in teaching, best practices in assessment. So it's all about good teaching and good assessing, right? It's not about the technology. Technology is a means. So
Exactly.
far, we know, one of the in one of my graduate courses, people were saying, no, but our students are all the time cheating and they are all the time. And I said, okay, do you know the characteristics of a text written with AI? Well, yeah, we kind of have an idea. So why don't we ask AI, how do students use you to cheat?
Yes.
And it came up with a list of 20 items. That is what we use to detect nowadays before submitting to turn it in. That has a way of detecting whether something has been written. I cannot draw. I cannot do graphic design. I use Wall-E for some pictures. It's always wrong. You never get what you want, right? Even the Canva one and the Bing one.
Sometimes they're funny. Those photos, like they seem very robotic, Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wanted something very clear for one of my presentations that I couldn't do because I don't have the graphic design tools to
There's
do. I
one
want
at Gabo.
a
I'll tell you.
weather vane,
Uh,
with the typical rooster on top, but the weather vane had to have 6 arms, and each arm should have at the beginning the letter E. I don't know in how many ways I gave those instructions, and I never got the 6 arms with an E. I got like the rooster, a bar, and 6 arrows going down, and
yeah.
on each arrow an E. So no. but I was doing a session on storytelling,
I'm
and I
using that.
needed to
Yeah.
use some pictures.
Yeah.
And of course, the style of the pictures is completely different,
It is.
right? So
It is.
I asked them to do the first square of the story, and the second square, the second frame will be different from the first one. But it saves us time, right? So
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience with machine learning and AI because I've tested this myself. You know, I like to experiment with every, let's say, software that is released. So I started first with ChatGPT, just like you said, and then I got into creating my own GPT. It's like I prompted. First I train it and then I test it. And now I'm getting the help of my students how to adjust a little bit because they're IT, you know, they're computer science students, they're undergrads, and they're very good at coding. So, but still, it's a research project in a process. And just like you said, whatever you give to that, you know, ChatGPT is just a chatbot. It's like
yeah,
you create it, you prompt it, and then you can upload anything up to that. Sometimes, especially now, copyright is really at risk, you know, because like ChatGPT does not give a reference to any information it processes. Whereas there's another one, which is Perplexity AI. It gives you the exact, I've tried to prompt
exactly.
a lot of things and exactly with the website and the link and with clickable links. And that's really awesome. And as for, I'm going to collect all the ideas that I have regarding how to generate nice, little bit real-like photos and videos. There is Runway and Pika. And I really recommend them for video like generating videos, but short, not very long, you know, few seconds. Adobe Firefly, I've tried it myself, and I've even tried it on my photo and animate the photo. Midjourney is also good, but
Mid-journey,
it does not give you the access. The free trial does
yeah.
not give you the access to a lot of things. If you want to invest in that, that's really everybody can do that. But it's like
I think we should all invest on some sort of technology and devote some of our budget to that.
yeah.
We're very lucky in Uruguay that because we have this one laptop per child programs, we've had it since 2007,
Yeah.
and particularly thanks to the pandemic. You know, Canva, which is
Oh
what
yeah, I
everybody
use it.
uses for
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
Well, if you log in with your official
Educational
account,
email. Yeah.
it's free.
Free.
Canva Pro is free. I subscribe to Mentimeter
Yes.
every
Yeah,
year
I use it.
because it's a good tool for me to add
Presentations.
interactivity to my classes.
Yeah.
Now, what is happening is Microsoft, for example, has add-ins which are free, which fulfill the same kind of functions
To
as
ChatGPT. Yeah.
as Mentimeter.
Yeah.
So I'm considering I'm not going to renew that license, but I'm going to get other licenses, right? I think that we all have to invest a little bit. It's like a doctor who invests in subscription to a journal, a medical journal, or I don't know, an engineer who invests on a new computer program that does better calculations. It's part of our, I know it's not easy, it's expensive, but if you have access to an international credit card that you can split into payments,
Uh-huh. Yeah, that will be
that can
the
help.
good investment. But there is a trick, Gabo, for Microsoft. You know what they're doing because the owner of ChatGPT, you know, at that particular time, he a little bit they worked with Microsoft. So there is a feature. I'm not sure what is it, but I will drop it maybe in the description with the video once I'll be uploading this to YouTube. The same features of ChatGPT 4, they are integrated for free in Microsoft. It's not with I have to remember exactly what is it. So I've seen it, I've tested that, but it gives you, you know, a certain amount of credits to use that. For example, you can gain credit if you share with other teachers, or so. It's like really
Nice.
what else? Apart from that, so ChatGPT and Runway. I'm going to use Runway and Pika for the second semester for a digital storytelling course.
Okay.
And because I work with computers, like software engineers, so like teaching them with a normal course book is very boring. So what I'm
Yeah,
doing
of
is
course.
like I've converted all that into digital storytelling. So they're gonna create their own storyboard and generate their own videos and work on improving the quality, let's say. And what else? So yeah, I have also podcasting part of that. So and I've even today I forgot to integrate my AI assistant into this podcast. So I sometimes I add an AI voice generator so that he or it asks the guest a question at the end. So I did it in my last episode. And it's just like I prompted and train it, and sometimes I don't get it right with the name, okay, because like it's not obvious to get the pronunciation right. But we're doing our best. I'm just enjoying this. A lot of people, they're being skeptic towards what is happening with AI. They're worried at the level of plagiarism. As for plagiarism, I have plagiarism detectors. So, but they use the human eyes. There is one, it's like, there is one website, it's called, I can't remember exactly, but it's good so that my students that won't get it and use it. It's like it humanizes the AI generated results. Even an AI detector can detect that.
Oh yeah. You know
Yeah.
what? The Grammarly plugin for Chrome, it's great at detecting plagiarism from AI because the syntactic model of, for example, ChatGPT
Known.
is not well done. I mean, it does have huge language mistakes, verb subject correspondence, inconsistency of tenses. It just splits out information into sentences, but does not, I don't know, it does not provide cohesion and coherence as a real person. So, yeah.
So I'm into the last question, and the last question for today will be about any future. You talked about your book, but any future goal, any idea you have in mind? Maybe using AI, maybe like within the association, is there a possibility that we can have I don't know, an AI assisted course, a conference, something like really thinking outside of the box?
I'm coming to the end of my term as president, or now past president with IATEFL. And it's coming at a good time. I went through my presidency during the pandemic, and it was very tough, but it was a wonderful thing that the board of trustees and the head office staff had to band together to survive. I'm coming to the end, but I would like to see more of a center stage from professional associations uh, in promoting professional development opportunities online. Why? Because I think that there are many limitations to the offer, even though it looks quite wide. There are many limitations to the offer of professional development because not always the specialist in a subject gets selected. If you are doing things for publishers or international lending bodies, they generally go for the popular, and the popular is not necessarily the specialist, right? I know many people in our profession who are very popular. They drop names, but they never talk about the concepts that those people have contributed. And their whole argument is based on, this is what I do in my classroom, right? They think by dropping names, you can make the synapses that, oh, that idea, right? I see that a lot, and this is edutainment. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think we all, at one point or another in a conference, we welcome something which is a little bit funny and practical. But when I go to those conferences and I see these teachers who may have saved for months to be able to pay the fees for the conference, and they have them throwing balloons at each other and acting as if they were 3 years old, that to me is a huge alarm. To me, professional events have to be professional. And I
Exactly.
don't care if you want to do a show or whatever, make it professional. Don't get teachers to jump around and sing "We Are the World" holding hands. And those things are
That's old
so
school.
phony.
Yeah.
But teachers like it. I mean, that is what teachers value. So to me, associations should spearhead getting the word out about the specialists and
Yeah.
being careful. My dream is to have associations be decolonized, because still you look at who is who in some associations, and they always belong to the same country or they have the same facilities, right? Um, the criticism for IATEFL, I was pushed by colleagues from South America to run for president, because they soon realized that in almost 60 years, there had never been
Mm.
anybody from Latin America who was president of IATEFL. And Harry Kucha Kucha was the first African. So if you are an international association, you have to be
Make it
representative of the
equitable. Yeah.
internationalization. And the same thing with TESOL. I mean, I love Luciana de Oliveira to pieces. And I was thrilled when she was the first Latino president of TESOL.
TESOL.
But she's a Latino woman, she's a Brazilian who has lived in the United States for the past 30 years and built a career in the States. And even though she has ties to Brazil, and we have discussed this, so that is why I'm saying it, and it is not a criticism. But if you want to be really international, show me that you can be international. Don't just fill out quotas by ticking boxes and not giving voices to the people whose box
Around
you've
the
ticked.
world. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Is as for me, do you know, if you remember, we talked a little bit at the beginning of the importance of giving a voice, not necessarily like to oneself, but for example, this video talk show or podcast, I don't want to even label this. I talk to colleagues and they sometimes they tell me it's not a podcast, it's visual. And so what? So it's like let's say a space for discussion. So this has enabled me to talk to people around the globe, the world, without discrimination. And why should I really, make it really restricted to some people and not others? So, I hope, like really, even though I'm not seeking, recognition from this, but I hope that at least one day, even a single person by watching any of the videos that I have posted can learn something, can be useful for their career, personal life, anything. So that's what I really want to leave as a legacy, even though, I see life from a different perspective. I don't see my legacy being left like after I've lived 70 to 80 years. It's like on a daily basis, anything that can be valuable. And would you like to add anything, Gabo? And thank you so much.
No,
Really so
just
happy for
that.
having you. Yeah.
No, I'm happy to have been invited as well. Kudos to you on this project and many others you're going to start,
Thank you.
no doubt.
Thank you.
Just thank you for giving me a space to talk,
Thank you.
uh, to share who I am, and
Thank you so
hopefully
much.
this will resonate with some colleagues, and new projects might emerge from this. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And Merry Christmas and best wishes for 2024. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and same
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thank you so much.